Have you ever wished you could just read someone? I mean, really know what they're thinking? Especially in a high-stakes negotiation or a big team meeting? We all want that edge. But what if I told you that most of the rules we've learned for decoding people are just completely wrong? Well, the psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett has this great term for these ideas, zombie ideas. They're concepts that science has already killed off, but they just refuse to die. They keep shambling through our culture, our businesses, and even government policies influencing huge decisions when they should have been buried long ago. So today, we're basically becoming zombie hunters. We're going to take a sharp, evidence-based look at the whole world of nonverbal communication, and we're going to put four of the biggest, baddest zombie ideas to rest for good. So here's the game plan. We'll start with these zombie ideas, then we'll bust four major myths one by one. The myth of a secret body language, the idea of a fixed personal bubble, the so-called universal face of emotion, and the biggest one of all, the human lie detector. And then we'll build a brand new, much smarter way to actually see and understand people. Okay, let's just dive right into the first huge myth. This is the idea that nonverbal behavior is some kind of secret code, a body language. You know the type. Buy this book and you'll be able to crack anyone's true intentions in a business deal or a team meeting. It's a tempting idea for sure. But here's the thing. To see why body language isn't a language at all, you just have to compare it to, well, an actual language. A real language has rules that nonverbal behavior just doesn't have. First, it can make claims you can prove true or false. Second, it has a vocabulary. The word chair pretty much means chair. But a scowl? Is that anger? Concentration? Did they just get a weird text? And finally, real language has grammar, or syntax. Dog bites man means something very different from man bites dog. Body language has no such rules. It's all just guesswork. So if there's no dictionary and no grammar, what actually gives a gesture its meaning? It's simple, really. It's all about the context. The situation, from the layout of your office to unspoken cultural norms, is what gives a behavior its meaning. There is no secret code to crack. All right, let's move on to our second zombie idea. This is one we've all felt, right? That sense of unease when someone gets a little too close. We talk all the time about our personal bubble, as if it's this real thing we carry around. And it feels real, doesn't it? It feels like we have this invisible shield that people just aren't supposed to cross. Does science actually back up this idea of a fixed, stable, personal bubble that controls how we interact? Yeah, the short answer is nope, not at all. Decades of research have shown that this idea is way too simple to explain the complicated, dynamic way we actually use space, especially in today's diverse and global workplaces. And here's why that bubble just completely bursts under scrutiny. First, it is not stable. You'll stand much closer to a colleague you like than a stranger, right? And that's not even getting into cultural differences, which are huge. Second, it's not personal, it's interpersonal. We negotiate space together, it's like a dance. And maybe most importantly, we use a ton of other cues like eye contact or how we angle our bodies to manage how close we feel to someone. And then there's technology, which just scrambles everything. Think about it. On a video call, someone 1,000 miles away can feel way more present and closer to you than the coworker sitting right across the table who's just buried in their phone. Okay, next up is a real giant of a myth. This one has been in textbooks for ages. It's the idea that a few basic emotions, happiness, anger, fear, are expressed on the face in the exact same way by every single person all over the world. There's actually a huge scientific shift happening right now in how we think about faces. The old idea, the basic emotions theory, says a face is just a readout of an internal feeling. So a scowl equals I feel angry. But a much newer, evidence-based view called the behavioral ecology view sees the face as a social tool. From this perspective, a scowl isn't just showing you're angry, it's an action designed to get someone else to back down. It's about what you're trying to do to someone else, not just what you feel inside. So, how do we know this old theory is on its way out? Well, a landmark study gave us some pretty powerful evidence. Researchers took these supposedly universal faces to the Trobriand Islanders of Papua New Guinea, a culture with very little exposure to the West. So, when the researchers showed them that classic wide-eyed, gasping face that Westerners would immediately label as fear, the Trobriand Islanders didn't see someone who was afraid. They saw someone who was being threatening and aggressive. I mean, that one finding just shatters the whole myth of universality. What a face means depends entirely on your culture and your context. And that brings us to our last, and honestly, probably the most damaging zombie idea of them all. It's the belief that the body can't lie, and that if you just learn the secret tells, you can become a human lie detector. This is a myth that causes managers to misjudge nervous but totally honest employees, and it has fueled a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, how good are we really at spotting a lie? Well, a massive analysis of over 200 different studies found that our average accuracy is a whopping 54%. That is basically a coin flip. And that includes everyone. Police, judges, federal agents, all the so-called experts. Nobody is reliably better than chance. But that little fact didn't stop the U.S. Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, from creating a program called SPOT. It stood for Screening of Passengers by Observational Techniques. And it was designed to train agents to spot terrorists in airports just by looking at their nonverbal behavior. And they spent over $1.5 billion on it. And the result? A government review found the whole thing had no scientific basis whatsoever and couldn't prove it had ever stopped a single terrorist. It was a complete and utter failure, built entirely on this myth. And here's why it was such a disaster. Just look at some of the absurd tells agents were trained to look for. Exaggerated yawning, whistling, clearing your throat. These aren't signs of deception. They're signs of stress or boredom or being tired. In a high-stress situation like an airport, or, for that matter, a tense performance review, an innocent person under pressure is just as likely to do these things as a guilty one. Okay, so if we're throwing out all these zombie ideas, what are we supposed to do instead? After all this myth-busting, it's time to build a smarter, more effective approach to understanding people, especially for anyone in a leadership role. So the real takeaway here is to replace all those myths with 3 simple, powerful principles. First, look for patterns, not single data points. Don't fixate on that one folded arm. Look at the whole cluster of cues, their tone of voice, their eye contact, the actual words they're saying. Second, remember that communication is a dance. It's interactive. Your behavior affects them, their behavior affects you. And finally, and this is the most important one, context is king. Behavior that's totally fine in a brainstorm is weird in a formal review. The situation is what defines the meaning. Getting this right is the key to truly effective communication with your team. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. As our work and our lives move more and more onto video calls and into virtual worlds with avatars, you can bet that a whole new generation of communication myths are going to pop up. The challenge for all of us is to stay critical, to demand evidence, and to make sure we don't get bitten by the next zombie idea. This entire explainer was based on a really comprehensive review of research by Patterson, Fridlin, and Crivelli, which was published in Perspectives on Psychological Science. And it's their work that helps all of us see each other just a little more clearly.